Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and today is another episode of NBA Trade Machine. This is a series in which I go through some of my own as well as some community-suggested trades for some of the biggest names on the NBA trade market. In this video, I'm going to be covering some of my own trades for Danilo Gallinari and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, and then I'll be covering some community-suggested trades for Kevin Love. With all that said, let's go ahead and get started. The first trade is going to involve Danilo Gallinari going to the Portland Trailblazers in exchange for Zack Collins, Kent Bazemore, and a 2021 top 15 protected first round pick. This is going to be a team and a framework that I would imagine you're going to see a lot across YouTube or other places, wherever you get your trade machine scenarios from. You're going to see this kind of thing for the Portland Trailblazers a lot. They have a lot of movable contracts. They have a need for a third scorer, and they turn both of those things into Danilo Gallinari in this circumstance. They get the third scorer that they need outside of Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, someone that provides them versatility as either a 3 or a 4 option, someone that provides them size as well on the wing. And again, it just takes some of the pressure off of Lillard and off of McCollum, and this is something that they've needed for a while and something that I would imagine they're going to finally address this season. And they're really not giving up a ton here other than a big expiring contract in Bazemore as well as Collins and then the first round pick. And again, that's something that you're going to see a similar structure for because they do have the ability to move Collins. He's a bit of a luxury for them at this point as a younger player that might not contribute a ton, especially when Jusuf Nurkic returns from injury, and then they obviously recently traded for Hassan Whiteside as well. So this is something that you're going to see a couple of times, even later on in this video as well. The Portland Trailblazers are going to be active looking for a third scorer, and I think Danilo Gallinari, with his shooting and his on-off-ball scoring presence, is someone that can really help them do that. On the other hand, the Thunder are getting at least something usable out of a player that probably isn't in their long-term plans beyond this season. There's always the possibility that the Thunder play well initially with Chris Paul and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Danilo Gallinari, and they don't actually look to move him or Chris Paul, but it's also very likely that they don't play as well as maybe you would think, and then they look to move specifically Gallinari for some assets because he does have an expiring contract this season. They get back Zack Collins, who could end up being something for them. He has 2 years left on his rookie deal for them to kind of figure it out. He's a former top 10 pick that could really be a good piece for them either on the court or a trade piece. They get the extra first round pick, though it does have a protection on it, but still that's an asset to have to add to a ton of first round picks. And then Bazemore is just matching Gallinari's salary on an expiring contract. So all that makes sense for them in their current situation, assuming that they don't play that well with this new group and they're looking to move someone like Gallinari for some assets. The other Gallinari trade involves him going to the Phoenix Suns in exchange for Tyler Johnson and Dario Saric. Now, I'll admit that this one is definitely different than the first Gallinari trade because the Suns and Trailblazers are presumably in very different spots currently in terms of how close they are to competing. The Trailblazers, with the right moves, could legitimately make the finals this year with all the player movement and the fact that the West is going to be very good, but there also isn't one truly dominant team at the moment, and Portland is one of the better teams out West. Meanwhile, Phoenix hasn't won 25 games in like 4 years. However, there's always the possibility that some of their younger players start to grow even more, like Devin Booker starts playing at a near all-NBA caliber level. DeAndre Ayton has a big second year. Ricky Rubio is good for them. Some of their wings start to play well. And it's always a possibility that maybe 20, 25 games into the season, they actually have a legit chance at making the playoffs. Now, I know we've said that for a couple years now, but again, it is always possible. And in that circumstance, I could definitely see them cashing in an expiring contract in Tyler Johnson and Dario Saric, who's a younger player with some potential, but obviously Gallinari is a much better player right now to help them continue to push for the playoffs. Gallinari's help, or how he helps the Suns, is very similar to how he helps Portland. He's an on and off ball scoring option, someone that can shoot, provides versatility at the 3 and 4 spots, provides size, and takes some of the pressure off of some of their leading scorers like Booker and Ayton. Again, this is very circumstantial and very different to the first one, but it's still something that I could see happening. But it's also something where the Clippers aren't getting as much compensation here as they did in the first deal. They're getting back basically just Saric because Tyler Johnson is just an expiring contract at this point. But again, Saric is someone that can help them long term and is a better player at this point, at least in my opinion, than Zack Collins, which is why they're not getting a pick. But there's no guarantee that there would be a trade out there for Gallinari that would include a pick anyway. So this is the deal that they got. I think they would at least consider taking it, and in the end, again, depending on their circumstance, they could end up trading Gallinari for Saric here and getting a future asset, albeit one that they do have to pay at the end of the season because his contract is expiring. Moving on now to the community suggested section for Kevin Love. In this deal, NJ says that the Cleveland Cavaliers would be receiving James Johnson and Kelly Olynyk in exchange for Kevin Love. So let's start with the Heat, because I think that's a little bit of a less complicated situation to look at here with NJ's trade. So obviously, they're going to be hunting stars. They've always been like that. Now that they have Jimmy Butler, they definitely need another all-star caliber player alongside him to really truly make some noise in the Eastern Conference this year. And they do have some big contracts on their roster, but they are relatively movable, especially compared to Love's 4 years that he still has left on his contract. This is a player that can still definitely help the Heat. They're not really super concerned with long-term salary at this point, obviously, because they've got Jimmy Butler for the next 4 years, and they've already got a good amount of salary on the books anyway. So turning some of those that do expire quicker than Love's in exchange for a guy that can actually really help them on the court would make sense. And he's basically just an upgrade over what Kelly Olynyk does for this team already. He provides them post scoring, shooting, someone that can average between 7 and 20 points a game. Not an outstanding defender, but again, just provides them a little bit more of an offensive punch alongside Butler. And at that point, they're probably like 1.5 moves away from really being someone, or a team at least, that teams are concerned about in the Eastern Conference. Again, they're really not giving up that much in a 2-year expiring contract in James Johnson and a 2-year expiring contract in Kelly Olynyk, and that's kind of where my problem comes in here for Cleveland, because yes, they're getting out of Kevin Love's salary 2 years early once those 2 contracts do come off the books, but that's really all that they're getting. And even though Love had injury issues last year and we haven't really seen him on the floor in a while, in my opinion at least, he's worth more than that. He's worth some kind of draft compensation or some kind of young player in return. And that's where things are going to get kind of tricky for the Heat, because they don't really have picks to trade because they've already traded away so many future picks. And the young players that they do have probably aren't going to be available in a Kevin Love trade. For example, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, or Justice Winslow. So I kind of see where we're going with this deal, but I'm not 100% convinced that it's something that's going to work, at least on the Cavs side, because they're just not getting as much as they would probably hope to in a Kevin Love trade. Which brings us to our other community suggested trade, this one from Gabe. He said the Cavaliers would receive Kent Bazemore, Zack Collins, and a future first-round pick in exchange for Kevin Love. So this is what I'm talking about earlier when I said that this is a framework that you're going to see a lot for the Portland Trailblazers, and in this case, it's Kevin Love instead of Danilo Gallinari. It's essentially the exact same thing that I came up with before Gabe even sent this over to me. This is something you're going to continually see anytime a big name player or a player that can at least help Portland becomes available. They have the contracts and the picks and the young players, specifically Collins, to try and make a deal work. However, I'm really putting this one in here because I'm curious what you guys think. Let's just say that the circumstance, the deal in place is the exact same. It's Bazemore, Collins, and a pick, a first-round pick. Who would you rather have right now if you're Portland? Would you rather trade for Danilo Gallinari from the Thunder, or would you rather trade for Kevin Love? Considering the contracts, considering the age, considering injury history, everything, who would you rather have on your team? Personally, I probably lean a little bit more towards Gallinari, because even though he has had injury issues in the past, Love just came off of a season where he barely played as well, so that's kind of a wash. And I just think that contract-wise, even though he does have to be paid after this season, at least you don't have to deal with the massive contract that Kevin Love is on at the moment. Plus, I just think that he's a little bit more dependable at the moment as a scorer, because we just saw him have a really good scoring season last year. That's nothing against Kevin Love. The Portland Trailblazers would still be really happy to get him for this package, but that's really why I put this one in here. Who would you guys rather pick in this scenario, assuming the deal is the exact same for Portland? And now we move on to a player that I think is in a really interesting situation, and that is Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. And in this trade, he would be going to the LA Clippers in exchange for Jerome Robinson and Mo Harkless. Okay, so this is a player that was suggested to me to cover on Twitter in the next NBA Trade Machine episode, and I think he's in a really interesting situation, because even though we don't really think about him all that much in the NBA because he's playing in Charlotte, they're not that good, and he's not a great offensive player, I really think that he's someone that can help a lot of playoff teams around the league, and I don't really think that Charlotte would ask that much for him, because I don't really think that he is in their long-term plans. He's more of a complementary player to other stars than an actual like high caliber All-NBA, All-Star caliber guy, obviously. And the Hornets don't really have stars to complement at the moment, so why not try and get value out of a guy whose contract is expiring at the end of this season? And on the other hand, if you're a playoff team, like for example, the LA Clippers, at least we're assuming that they're going to be a playoff team and a really good one, assuming that they stay healthy, Kidd-Gilchrist is someone that can really help them versatility-wise, match up against different teams in the playoffs that maybe otherwise could cause them issues. He's someone that, in my opinion, can play and give really good minutes, maybe 20 to 25 minutes a game in the correct playoff series at the 4 and 5 spots. Even playing him as a small ball 5, like if they run into the Rockets in the postseason or any team out west, because you're going to see another Western Conference trade scenario for Michael Kidd-Gilchrist in a second. Any team like that would end up running into Houston or maybe even Golden State that's going to go smaller having Kidd-Gilchrist and having him be able to play the 5 or the 4 spot and play really good defense, even though he can't shoot, I think would be really valuable. And the Clippers aren't giving up a ton here. I mean, I still really like Jerome Robinson. I think he can be a good player for them. But if you're really just giving up him and Mo Harkless, and you have so many other perimeter guys to take up the minutes that those guys might end up playing, getting someone like Kidd-Gilchrist that just gives you something different than everybody else on the roster, is just a really good defender, energy guy, 4 and 5 player. I think it would be worth it to make this move. And again, Charlotte gets some kind of value out of a guy that they're probably going to let walk at the end of the season anyway, and Robinson could end up being a good player for them. So this makes sense to me, and it's going to be a bit of a similar structure for the next Kidd-Gilchrist trade as well. And that trade is Kidd-Gilchrist to the Jazz in exchange for Dante Exum and Tony Bradley. So again, similar situation here. It's a Western Conference playoff team that could potentially make the conference finals or the finals if they make the right moves and if they play well enough, giving up 2 younger players in exchange for a guy that can really help them versatility-wise and defensively. The Jazz are a team that does still need some depth, so maybe this is a bit of an issue for them, trading away 2 players for 1 and limiting their depth. But Dante Exum has had more than his fair share of struggles over the past couple of seasons with injuries and things like that. Still a young player that could be something, as is Tony Bradley, but you know that Michael Kidd-Gilchrist can help you in a playoff series. So it makes sense to trade these 2 younger guys for him, at least in my opinion. And again, Charlotte, you're getting someone in Dante Exum that is locked up for the next couple of seasons, could end up being a good player for you, and then Tony Bradley is a big guy that could end up being something as well. Again, I think Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is a player that's going to be traded to a playoff team this season, and probably a good one as well, and could play a big role in a postseason series because of his ability to match up with certain teams that could cause issues. But there you have it. Those are all the trades in this week's version of NBA Trade Machine. As always, if you have suggestions or players or trade ideas or scenarios or anything you want to send to me, the best way to do that is by commenting either on this video or hitting me up on Twitter, and I will absolutely take a look. But that is going to be the end of this week's episode. I thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then please be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.